Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week is a really fun one. I am interviewing author Ben Rehder. Now, Ben was an author that I read as a kid. His books are certainly not kids' books. They're adult mysteries, funny mysteries. One with the Blanco County series follows a game warden, but he does a lot more than just that. He's solves murders and all that kind of stuff too, and has some really fun and funny characters doing some really wacky stuff. And then he's got his Roy Ballard series. It's a little bit more serious, but definitely still has a lot of jokes to it as well. You'll see he's a funny guy to talk to. But like I said, I read him as I was, as a kid. I read a lot more as a child. I still read, but not as much as I used to. But he blew my mind in this interview because he's going to tell me about how I wrote him as a 14-year-old. I wrote him an email asking him for his autograph. And, now as a 30-year-old doing this podcast, he was one of the first people I thought about when I wanted to interview an author, kind of the behind the scenes. Definitely a well-known author and one that's won quite a few awards as well. But just that he remembered that email. He actually sent me the email later on. Blew my mind. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how he got his start in writing, how he became a successful writer, his transition from being a traditional writer with a publisher and the company and the editor and all that kind of stuff, now to being self-published. Of course, still editors, but doing most things through ebook and Amazon and that area, and why he made that change. We're going to talk about some advice he has for people who want to kind of follow that same path as he did. I think that his advice is pretty blunt. I like that he didn't really mince words with it. But it was an amazing conversation. I think you'll really enjoy this. Whether you're someone who just likes to read books, whether you're an aspiring writer, whether you're someone who is a Ben Rehder fan and you're just listening to hear some of his behind the scenes, I think you'll learn a lot. Regardless of why you're here. But glad you're here, and here is my interview with Ben Rehder. I am here today with author Ben Rehder. How are you, Ben?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah, so, obviously we know you from a lot of really, really cool books, but tell us a little bit about yourself outside of, I guess, that writing sphere.
Okay, well, I was born and raised here in Austin. I live just outside Austin now, but I grew up kind of not really in the city, not really in the country. I was just kind of one of those kids that back then anyway, rode dirt bikes and played in the creek but would go in town. Oh, I say go in town because, we always lived kind of right on the edge of town or further out. And but I ended up going to UT, the University of Texas, like just about any Austin kid wants to do. But I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living, or, honestly, I didn't have any real interest. I was always a fairly good writer, but I was studying German. My grandfather had been the head of the UT German department. I thought, well, I'll be a translator. I enjoyed German. I always made A's in German. Took 4 years in high school. So I started out at UT saying I was going to be a translator. Well, on some career day, they had you go speak to somebody. I spoke to this other translator. She said, you generally need to speak something like 8 or 9 languages. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's even true, but I was like, whoa, well, that kind of derailed that plan. So I guess you didn't have to declare your major yet. So when time came, I became an English major just because I always loved English. I loved reading and writing. I was a big reader, always made A's in English. But I started working at this ad agency as a runner, a delivery person to, take documents and stuff here and there. But I started watching what they were doing inside the creative department at the ad agency, and it looked like a lot of fun. And before long, a position came up for a copywriter's assistant. And I went to the head copywriter her name was Mary Summerall. You might recognize that name from the acknowledgments in all of my books because she's now one of my editors. But I asked her, can I give that a shot, the copywriter's assistant? And she said, believe it or not, she said, sure. So I started doing that and just loved it. I was writing ads and brochures and radio spots and just stumbled into this career that I loved. And it was just the greatest luck. And I was doing things as a sophomore in college that graduates would have killed to do. I don't know if I even appreciated it as much as I should have at the time. But so that's how I kind of just stumbled into this writing career. And then later on, somebody said, well, my father had tossed, my father-in-law had tossed me a copy of a Hyacin novel, and I just loved all the Carl Hyacin books. But people would ask me, well, you're a writer. Why don't you write a novel? I'd say, well, why don't you write a novel? No, so eventually I decided to go off and try that. And, we can get into the specifics later if you want, but it's slow. I had been a freelance copywriter for decades, and the novels slowly replaced the ad writing. And now for, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years, I've been just writing the mystery novels and no more ad business. I loved it, but I enjoy writing the novels a lot better. Just no clients except, well, thousands of clients, but none of them, I don't have to answer phone calls and, meet deadlines. Any deadline is my own deadline. And so that's kind of the 5-minute synopsis of how I got where I am.
That's really cool. Yeah. So some of the things that you were talking about earlier that I want to kind of unpack. One is, that you went you started out in German, which is not maybe as strange as I think some people would think, given Texas oddly has a really large German culture. I've actually been to, I've been to Austin and that San Antonio area, and there's a lot of like German towns, and there's a whole German dialect. Do you know anything about all that?
Oh, very much so. I mean, especially, all over Central Texas. I mean, there's so many burgs, Fredericksburg, but Luckenbach, all these German sounding names because, there was a lot of German settlers here. There's still some folks that learned German from their parents or grandparents and maybe never took any in school. And like I said, my grandfather was German, and he moved over here in, I guess it was 32 or 31, and worked at a bunch of different universities, ending at UT, where he became the chairman of the German department. And so that was in like the early 50s. So that was my interest solely. I love German. I could go over to Germany and get by as long as people spoke slowly. I wouldn't understand anything, that people are rattling as they spoke to each other as they passed by. But I could, I could get by. But in honesty, I should have taken 4 years of Spanish. I would be just downright fluent and would be using it, anyway. But there's massive German influence all around Central Texas.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I also took German in high school and wish I would have taken Spanish. My family's actually from Germany. My grandma moved here when she was in her 20s. So that was the reason why I wanted to. But I agree. Yeah. Spanish would have been more beneficial because pretty much, that's years ago, but pretty much all I got left is just mein Deutsch ist nicht sehr gut. It's about all I can really say. Yeah. I got a little bit more, but we won't go into that.
I could say just about everything, but I might not be able to say it like, if I could, I might have to use a roundabout way of saying some things if I didn't know a particular word.
So real quick, before we get to your books, you mentioned that you live in Austin. So I've been to quite a few places in Texas, and I can tell you, Austin is quite different than most of Texas. So, I mean, is that true for those who live there too? Does it kind of feel like a totally different world than the rest of Texas?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it is. That's one case where, the stereotype or the myth or whatever you're going to call it is absolutely accurate. I mean, there are other, the most obvious thing without getting into it too much is the politics. Austin is a much more liberal town, and there are other towns that are, possibly as liberal, but just not quite as much. And Austin is known for that. And, you will get some remarks about that. And, it's night and day compared to some towns, other towns. And I'm not going to even get off into which one I prefer, but
Right.
but I mean, in Austin also though has really changed a ton. I mean, to the point you get a lot of natives like me and my wife and long timers that complain about it, and there's a valid reason, because I can remember what it was like 40, 50 years ago. And it's just a completely different city. And it's still, people say, oh, but it's still a cool city. It's still a cool city. And that's true. And especially if you don't remember how it was, I imagine people moving here love it, but and it's a different type of experience though. I mean, the Austin from the 70s and, I don't really remember the 60s because I was born in the 60s, but, I remember the 70s. I remember the 80s just brilliantly. And, it was a great, great town, and smaller, much, much smaller. And the skyline, golly, the skyline has just exploded in the last 10 to 15 years to the point. I mean, it's just, I gave up complaining. I mean, I'll comment on it, but I mean, what's there to complain about? I mean, what can you do? There's no, I grew up on this little 2-lane winding road that is now just a thick, for years now has just been thick with business. I mean, all the way from one end to the other. I mean, it used to be you could get on B Caves Road, which is the one I'm talking about, and drive all the way to the end of it with no stoplights. And we lived out about halfway. If I would take somebody out there, like a date or a friend or whatever, they would be like, where are you going? And now it's like, it's just, people are commuting way past that. I mean, it's just exploded, and it's easy to get nostalgic.
No, I understand that for sure. No, I get it. So let's talk about your books. You talked about, how everyone was telling you, hey, you should start writing books. You should start writing books. So what, I guess, made you finally get that courage to, I'm going to do it. I think in 2002 is when you started. And what made you just finally just bite the bullet and be like, I'm going to write something?
Well, actually, the first one came out in 2002. I started I believe it was the 1998, because after my father-in-law gave me that Hyacinth book, and I just was like, I'd always been a mystery reader, crime fiction, suspense, whatever you want to call it, Grisham, Stephen King, but mostly mysteries or crime fiction. But I had never read anything quite like Hyacinth. I mean, that was just amazing to me, that I was like, I didn't know you could have so much fun with it, and it was double whammy for anybody who wants to check it out. Hilarious mystery. And he's just so biting, and they're just so refreshing after, it's just a whole different world than, say, a James Patterson novel. So I started kind of thinking, maybe I should try to write a novel, because people had encouraged me. Why don't you try to write a novel? You're a writer and you love reading. I was, especially when I was a kid, man, I used to just read constantly. I always had a book with me. I loved when the books you'd order from Scholastic and the books would show up in elementary school. And that was just the highlight. But so after I read Hyacinth, I was like, okay, well, I made a New Year's resolution to attempt to write a novel. And you notice that's different than saying making a New Year's resolution to write a novel. Mm-hmm. The word attempt was in there. So that way, if I failed, I could say, if I didn't finish the novel, I still attempted, so I met my resolution. So I just decided I was going to write something kind of wacky and fun, but a mystery for sure, or crime fiction, however you want to call it. And so the question then was, well, what is it going to be? Who's the protagonist? So I had to fill in those blanks, and actually just immediately thought a game warden. A game warden would be great because he's in law enforcement. I did, even though I was a hunter, I didn't really know exactly I didn't know the full scope of their responsibilities and what they did every day, other than checking licenses and stuff, So luckily I had a friend that was a biologist with the Parks and Wildlife Department. He set me up to talk to and ride along with some game wardens, especially one named Jim Lindeman, great guy. He's still a great guy and answers a lot of my questions still. I pester him. And I just learned everything there was everything that I could anyway, about game wardens. And I was interested to see that, they don't do just those things. There's a wide variety of things they might get involved with. And maybe I stretch it a little bit, but in like a sparsely populated county like Blanco County, the game warden is more likely to do things outside that traditional scope because there's fewer law enforcement personnel, and the sheriff might say, yeah, why don't you go check this out? And whereas like in Travis County, I mean, the population of Blanco County is like, last I knew, I think it's like 10,000. And the county itself is about the same size as Travis County right next door, which has, I couldn't even tell you now, but it's got to be well over 1 million. It might be 2 million for all I know. Mm-hmm. So believe me when I tell you, there's a lot of cops in Travis County. I mean, they've got, every little town. I mean, they don't need help. Not that they won't take it, but they don't need to recruit a game warden to come help with something, that's outside, unless he or she is already working on it as part of his or her job. But in Blanco County, or any of these sparsely counties, let's say a game warden is investigating, a poaching incident, and it grows into something bigger. It's not uncommon for them to continue instead of passing it off to a deputy or a patrol officer if it turns into to be something more along the lines where someone like that should investigate it. So I chose Blanco County not only because it was sparsely populated, but because I had just recently bought some property there and loved it out there. My sister lives out there in Johnson City. It's just a fun, great county. And the only thing it doesn't really have that I had to create for book 2 is a lake. There's no lake. And as many lakes as Central Texas has, there's none in Blanco County. So I created this reservoir, I called it. Now there's the Pedernales River, there's the Blanco River, and there's other creeks and rivers that run through there, but none of them are dammed up enough to have a lake, So, and I don't know how much your listeners know about Central Texas, but we've got lakes and big lakes, but they're all like in Travis County and Burnett, and they kind of wind just up past Blanco County.
So you started with the game warden, and you've written, I believe, 15 Blanco County books already, 6 of another series of Roy Ballard, and then those 2 standalones you're talking about. So if the first one came out in 2002, and you've written what, another 20 plus, that's at least a book a year. So you've stayed relatively busy.
Yeah, the first 6 were with St. Martin's in New York, the publisher, and you had a deadline, and it wasn't quite as fast, but maybe 10 years ago when the Kindle was taken off and Amazon was taken off with their publishing, it kind of got to the point where the books did fine, and I could have continued with St. Martin's. They offered a contract for the 7th book. It wasn't a real enthusiastic contract, and most writers, I'm very lucky. For one thing, I should say that I know you've been a reader for a long time. In fact, I looked back at an email you sent me from 2006. So
really?
Yes, you sent me an email in 2006 asking for my autograph. Do you not remember that?
I don't. That's really cool. You must not have done it.
No, I'm sure I did. I know I did.
It's just all coming back to me. You're 100% right, and I absolutely have that. That's hilarious. I did not remember that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So, I owe a lot to you and all my other readers that, allow me to do this for a living. I mean, I love it. I'm very fortunate, but most authors, and it's no reflection on their work, they don't get to make a living at it. It's just, that's the hard reality of it. And there's a lot of luck involved, a lot. And so I happen to be at this perfect juncture where I could have continued with St. Martin's. Honestly, if I hadn't been in the ad business, I might have continued with them, because this is kind of a weird little area to get off into, but there's a certain amount of let's face it, ego stroking when you walk in and see your book on a shelf of a bookstore. It feels great, and that alone, and there's nothing wrong with that. People need to have confidence and do things that make them feel good. And there's definitely, I remember the first time I walked in and saw my book on a shelf, and it was just, what a rush, my wife was giddy and we went in there. But there's also, you get a lot of that in the ad business, especially when you're a 19-year-old kid and you hear your radio spot on the radio. And so part of the thing you get from the books on the shelf of the big store, I was already getting from the ad business, this kind of nice feeling of seeing my work in public, seeing the reactions to it. So I had less incentive to want to continue, with that playing any much of a, factor into it. So it was basically like, why do I want to continue? They're making like, it's a lucrative hobby, And so I said no. And I went off and wrote this other time, the Roy Ballard on speculation, and showed it to my agent, and she was pretty lukewarm about it. And she probably would have pitched it if I had pushed her back. She was a great agent, but she was like, I thought this was going to be a thriller. And honestly, I don't even I just write what I want to write. I don't really care where it fits, and no, I guess it's not a thriller, but right then the Kindle was coming out. And honestly, I think a lot of publishers didn't, or nobody saw where it was all going. What I did was get the rights back to those first books, all except one, Gun Shy. But I asked for the rights back. Most of them were out of print. When that happens, they just give you the rights back. Now, in hindsight, I'm sure St. Martin's would have loved it if they had the foresight to go, no, let's put these back in print because these rights are going to be valuable again because this ebook thing is about to take off. But they didn't see it. I didn't see it, but I figured no harm in getting the rights back. So what a lot of authors were doing then were getting the rights back, meaning St. Martin's could no longer publish it. Now I could publish it directly myself or shop the rights to somebody else or whatever. The rights were back. And I don't mean copyright. I mean publishing rights for your listeners. There's a distinction. I always had the copyright, but when you sign a contract with a publisher, you're giving them the right to publish that book. Mm-hmm. And until that contract ends, there's always a reversion clause that it's out of print or if it's not selling a certain number, blah, 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 you can get the rights back. So I got the rights back and put them out myself just for grins, directly to the Kindle on Amazon and some other platforms. And just to see, well, I wonder if I'll make any money, and it was slow at first. And I mean, it was real slow, but then it was like, a lot of us were going, wow, this is kind of cool. I could see my numbers on my account on Amazon clicking, like you refresh it through the day and I was like, hey, I got a sale, and that's a rush, and it was very modest at first. And I can't remember at this point how quickly it started to pick up, but it was quickly enough that I was like, this is going somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so even though I had written Holy Moly, the sixth one in the series, basically as a farewell, it wasn't like, so harsh of a farewell that I couldn't come back to it by any means. But I thought, well, this is the last one. And I kind of wrote it with a nice little thing that ended it, that thought, if this is the end, this will be the end. But after my agent passed on publishing the first Roy Ballard, I thought, well, I was almost relieved when she said, no, I don't know if I can't even remember what she said, but it was like, again, if I'd pushed her, she might have, or I probably could have gotten a different agent to pitch it. But I said, I was actually kind of relieved, like, no, I'm gonna put this one out myself. It was exciting. Mm-hmm. And so I was happy about it. And I put it out and started writing the next Blanco, this is Hog Heaven back in, I can't even remember when, probably 2010 or 11 or 12 or something. But I started going back to them, and it kind of, Amazon totally and completely rejuvenated my writing career for novels. And I'm not talking about the ad business. But, a lot of people have criticisms of Amazon justly for some things. But when it comes to if you just look at their publishing branch, and again, there's a lot of people in the business that absolutely hate them. And I don't want to get off into the weeds too much about that, but nobody has given me the opportunity and the reality that Amazon has. And there's a lot of people that make money off books, a lot of people. And when I first got into it, and all of these people deserve the money, but the people that were making a living, in a career, were agents and editors and publishers and publicists and the people who, bookstore managers and employees, the people who drive the trucks that deliver the books. Oh, what about the authors? Well, there weren't many. I mean, hardly any. And it seemed kind of weird to me when I'm going on tour, taking time off so I can go tour for this book and make a very modest amount of money. I kind of thought about that. I was like, all these people I'm meeting in the business, they're all making a living at it, why are no writers making a living at this? And that was just the reality of it. My experience, just mine with Amazon, is just, it couldn't be any better. They have delivered this dream for me. And if the traditional world wants to compete with that, they need to find a way to do it. And it's not all about the money. I'm talking about reaching readers and having your being autonomous, having your, not having to answer to a lot of people, just setting your own schedule. I've been self-employed for 30 years and in the ad business, and then now. And at one point, about 3 or 4 years ago, there's a very well-known songwriter with a very well-known song that they wanted to write a novel about. They wanted to turn this novel into a song. And an agent that I know recruited me to get involved. And there had been some other writers involved. Ultimately, it didn't work out. I had an idea that it should go this way. The songwriter, I don't think quite saw it that way. And so ultimately, I just finally said, there was no contract even. I finally just said, okay, well, this isn't for me. We don't see eye to eye on this. That whole creative difference thing. I've never had that with anybody where it's ended something, I was so relieved when I got out of that, because it was I'm having to answer to other people and go to meetings, and instead of just getting up and writing and doing what I want to do, on my schedule. And that's one of the great, great benefits. It's I try to write a novel. I try to put one out every 9 months, and pretty much I've done that. I think it's about every 9 months. And, but if I choose not to, I can do that. If I choose to do it in 6 or a year and a half, I'm sure some of my readers would be bummed and they'd be going, hey, when's the next one? They're doing that anyway at 9 months. And then I know some other authors who crank them out I know an author that puts out a novel about every 4 or 5 months. And literally, if he had a publisher and wanted them to put them out that frequently, they probably wouldn't. Now, it's one thing for James Patterson where you're selling, I don't even know how many, probably 5 million right off the gate, so they're going to put out as many as they possibly can, as quickly as they possibly can. Here's to put it in perspective. I started writing my first book in 98. I finished it in August of 99. So it took me 20 months, and it's not a long book because there was no hurry. There's no hurry to finish when the only person waiting for it is your mother. That's what I always tell them at the library, and they laugh. So then it was shopping for an agent, because that's how you did it back then. I couldn't just put it out. And if I hadn't gone this route, I don't think I would ever, self-publishing wouldn't have worked for me, because I had no name. I didn't have a reader base. It was the combination of having built this series and then went on my own that worked for me. That's the luck I'm talking about. But so in August of 99, I started an agent search, and I think I got my agent in, it was May of 2001, I believe. But anyway, I got the deal. I think that was in June of 2001, and it didn't come out until September of 2002. And that's pretty fast. Normally, sometimes it's 2 years, but it was a 2-book deal and blah, blah, blah. So it came out in 2002. And then after that, it was about a book a year. It seemed like, although there was one where it was nearly 2 years between 4th and 5th. They're always, of course, wanting you to increase your sales. And there's not a lot you can do that as an author other than what you write. And so they're always suggesting you write a bigger book. And at first I don't even know what that means, but it means bigger stakes, bigger themes, big, bold characters. When you think of, say, thrillers are often big books, and it doesn't necessarily mean better book. It just means a bigger book, some evil person is somehow plotting to take over the world. That's a big book. That means it's going to be a good book, Yeah. But versus just some little character study or something where you're just following one guy and his tiny little struggles and his small life, or quiet life. That's not a big book, but that could be the most brilliant book ever written, depending on how it's written and what it's about, But so they're always telling you to write bigger books, and we kind of tried that, but it took me a while that's where I did explore a little bit of politics in my books. And other than maybe some few snarky remarks every now and then, I don't really get into it. I just want to have fun. I want to write about fun stuff. But gun shy, kind of got into the whole gun thing. I kind of tried to like make fun of both sides and examine both sides. And although it's not like, just overwhelmingly political, it's still fun, I hope. So that one, it took a year and a half or two to get to gun shy, and then holy moly. It wasn't political, but it's about the whole religious thing. And that was kind of fun, about a televangelist, and,
Yeah. And I think just the story of being able to kind of take that power back. There's so many people out there that are basically, really making money off of your work, and being able to get that power is always a good thing. So we're talking about those two series. So do you I'm kind of looking at the dates. Do you go back and forth, or how do you decide which one that you're going to start writing? Or are you writing both simultaneously, or how does that work?
No, I go back and forth, and only one book at a time. Now I might have an idea for a book and go write it down, but no, I'm never working on two at the same time. Always just one, and I just go back and forth. And honestly, I don't know. One series is pretty well outselling the other one, and it would surprise you if I told you. I will. It's the Ballard series. The Ballard series per book is significantly outselling the Blanco books, but the Blanco books are so beloved. I mean, I get more comments about the Blanco books, and it's a lot. And it might just be simply because it's had so many. Things do tend to just slow down after a while, but. So it would be tempting just to go off on the Ballard, and I love writing the Roy Ballard. Those are so much fun. They're all fun, but I think it just makes the most sense just to go back and forth. So that's what I do. And many readers read both. Some readers just they just one appeals more than the other, and they may start a Blanco novel and just go, well, I guess this isn't for me. But they love the Ballard, or vice versa, or they just haven't tried them. So. But yeah, I just bounce back and forth.
No, that makes sense. So, you talked about humor, and then also, some of your inspirations. Was it important to you to, have humor within your books? I mean, I kind of see you kind of as probably a humorous guy anyway. So did it kind of just come naturally that shown in your books, or did you actually mean to make that happen?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think in general, I'm a pretty lighthearted guy. I like to crack jokes sometimes at inappropriate times, but, like when I go to speak to a group, I've had people tell me, it may not come across in this podcast, but I've had people, oh, you should be a stand-up comedian, haha, And it's all the same old shtick that I've been telling for 20 years, so I'm pretty well practiced at it by now. But yeah, I like to, I'm not a serious guy. I can be, I'm doing my taxes or something, which I was earlier. But I like to have a good laugh, or I like to be amused or entertained. I like it when somebody makes some funny remark that you weren't expecting during an interview on TV of some serious person. And they suddenly make a glib remark, and you're like, oh, that's funny. I enjoy that kind of thing. And I want the books to be like silly but also unexpected. And it was absolutely that's why, again, Hyacinth kind of opened my eyes to the idea of, wow, that there is a bigger inclusive world of possibilities than I had expected, which is why I started to write to begin with, because I said I can be wacky. Doesn't mean it's going to sell. In fact, the first thing my agent said to me when she called me, her assistant had told me she wants to sign me on, so she called me, and the first thing she said was, I might be making a big mistake, but I like this book. Because it was just so different. And she was like, these were like, it's filled with Texas hunters and rednecks and poachers and weird people. And my agent was like this 70-year-old Upper East Side New York lady that had been from Sag, and then had a home in Sag Harbor. In other words, it was just not her world at all. But she was intrigued by it just because it was fun and different. And without her, it never would have started, so I owe a lot to her. But I wasn't interested in writing just a serious mystery or a standard. In fact, at one point when I was still messing around trying to come up with this big idea, I wrote like half of a very dark, bloody mystery, and I liked it. I mean, I liked what I had written, and it wouldn't have bothered me at all if I'd finished and published it and all that. In fact, I could always just go back to it now and put it out. But it wouldn't have been as much fun. I like to have fun, you know. I want to write something that when I read it later, because by the time I'm done, you know, and I go back to revise, I've forgotten a lot of it. I like it when I hit a line that makes me laugh, and it's almost like I don't remember writing it, and I'm like, it doesn't even feel like I wrote it. It feels like I'm reading someone else's work, and so I like it when I hit a line, go, oh, that's funny. Or when I'm writing one, I wrote one the other day. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh, that's a good, and it wasn't like, again, it was just like, it just popped into my head. I put it down. I said, oh, that's going to be a good one. That's a great line right there. So, yeah, I mean, I know it sounds pompous that I'm amusing myself when I'm writing it, but you know, it's a lot more fun than just not amusing yourself, you know?
Yeah. So I guess that kind of brings up a good question. Do you, when you're writing these books, I guess, everyone you're writing, do you write it and think, you know, this is topping the next one? Do you ever are like, you know, this one's probably not as good as, you know, such and such, or how does that work?
All the time. I mean, there's always literally in every book, and I'm about there in the current one I'm writing, I'm like, oh, this isn't working. I don't like it. Well, part of the problem is I don't outline, and I don't have the book fully formed when I start. I'm a spontaneous guy. A lot of authors, you'd be surprised how many do it this way. Just dive in. I have a broad idea. I think I might know who did it, but I might always change my mind, because you're going to create, in a mystery, you're going to create this world of characters that might have done it. Otherwise, there's no mystery, right? So you got to have like 3 or 4 or 5 different possible suspects. And I might go, okay, it's going to be Joe right from the start. I know he did it, and here's why. But as I'm writing it, I might go, I don't know. Maybe if I made it Sue instead because of this. And so I might change my mind in midstream. And then I also have some other plots going on, usually that seem completely unconnected, but they end up connecting. Mm-hmm. But usually I don't know how or why or what one has to do with the other. So I reach this point where I'm going, I got to figure out how to tie all this together. And sometimes it does fairly easily. Other times I have to go back and massage what I've written earlier to make it tie together later. But yeah, and so there's always a point where I'm like, this is useless. This doesn't make any, these are unrelated, and this doesn't make any sense, or why would this suspect have done this? Or that's just not a very compelling idea. And then it always works out. I mean, it's worked out every time. I mean, there's not any unpublished books I've written. So, and I always feel like, yeah, this one was fine. This is a fine book. You know, it's not great. But then luckily when I'm revising, it always perks me up and makes me feel much better, because I'm like, oh, that's funny. And again, you know, these aren't like the kind of books that are going to change your life or, you know, be studied in a college English class. I have 2 that might, the 2 standalones, I would say, if I were lucky, would qualify in that area. But these are just fun, page turning, I hope, mysteries. That's all I want you to do, is read them, flip the page, and want to keep reading because you're amused or entertained or you're in suspense. And I just want you to keep reading the pages. And that's all I try to do, you know?
So I guess the next question I would have is advice you would have for other people who want to be a writer. You know, you can answer that in any way, but I do want you to specifically answer one thing that I've always kind of wondered. And it is when people write series books, but they write it in a way, and I think that you do too, that you don't, I mean, obviously it helps that you've started from the beginning, but I mean, you really could probably pick up, you know, book 4 and be okay.
Sure.
So how do you know, make a conscious effort to make sure that there isn't, you know, big plot points that everyone has to know from book 2 to read book 4. And then just as a whole advice that you have.
Well, in the series, like you say, you can pick one up and read it, and there might be some references to earlier stuff that happened, but they're not going to be like such that you're completely confused, or you might not understand the reference, but it makes no impact on the book itself. And each plot is pretty much self-contained. Let me explain what I mean by that. A lot of times, at one point, the series was getting developed for TV. And one thing I learned talking and working with the writer who was developing it is that one popular approach in TV, and I never really thought of this, was to have, like, if you have a mystery, you've got one overarching mystery that spans the entire season for that TV show, and then one little mystery in each episode that is figured out by the end of that episode. Right. But like there's that bigger mystery might be, let's just make one up and say, okay, it's like you got a character named Todd, and Todd's parents look like they died in a car crash, but maybe something else went on. So as he's solving each little mystery, he's also learning about, did my parents really die in a car crash, or did someone run them off the road? And he gets a little bit, and so hopefully by the end of that season, he solves that mystery that's the bigger one, or the longer one anyway. Well, the books aren't like that. The books, each one, I mean, you got characters that are in all of them, but there isn't some overarching mystery that would make you, if you dove in a book 4, go, I don't get what's going on with this thing because I didn't read these 3. They're each self-contained. Now, again, though, I might say make some allusion to this woman Marlon used to date, and you wouldn't know who it is because that was in book 1. That's not a big deal. You just assume, okay, well, he dated some woman. It's not going to have any impact on reading this book now and understanding the plot or anything like that. So you can definitely dive right in. I think that covered that part. And then as just general advice, that's a topic alone that could take an hour, but I'll just try to be real brief. First of all, if you're an aspiring writer, you need to figure out whether you're any good at it. I hate to say that, but not everybody's good at everything. I'm a terrible singer. I'm a terrible mechanic. I can't.
That was the next question. I was going to have you sing a few songs. That's not going to happen.
No, unless you got a karaoke machine in there. But no, and there's nothing wrong with that. If I had this grand aspiration to be a artist, meaning to like an illustrator, that would be terrible. I mean, that would be no matter how badly I wanted it, I would need to listen to the people that say, Ben, you're just not good at it. And that's okay. I'm good at some other stuff. And so if you're lucky, your aspirations match the things that you're good at. Some people, they're not, though. And so they are wanting to write when they really should go off and do this other thing that they're really good at. And so if you're writing and you're showing it to people and getting lukewarm responses or pitching it to agents, and you're not getting some of them going, I really like this. It's not for me, but I like it. If you're not getting that, or if you're not at least getting some sincere encouragement that you should keep doing it, you might want to wonder, is this the right area for me? I mean, I know that's rough, but I've judged some manuscript contests, and there's a lot of folks out there that, want to write, and, it might not be in the cards, and which isn't to say you can't keep at it and try to, learn to write better. That's what the ad business did for me. I wasn't just like some fantastic writer, and I'm still not. I wouldn't consider myself. I'm still learning. I'm still improving, I hope. But I was lucky that this interest that I had also opened a career for me, and because if I wanted to be a tuba player, I never was any good at any of that kind of stuff. I'm not a good mechanic. There's so many things in fact, this is really the only thing I'm good at. It honestly is. I mean, that I can make a living at. I'm a decent pool player, but I'm not going to be able to make a living at that. Yeah. So I got very lucky in that. But let's say you are talented and you're getting response. You need to also be aware that it's a long shot, a massive long shot that you're ever going to really have any kind of success. Part of that is because there's just so many books being put out there, and there's many, many, many of them. That's another strike against Amazon that probably shouldn't be out there. Mm-hmm. They really, there's a lot of stuff that's published that you're like, I mean, Yeah. I mean, anybody can publish just about anything. There are some standards you have to meet, but as far as whether it is a good book, there's no standard for that. You can publish, you can just say, this is a book full of nothing but the alphabet, and you can probably publish that as long as it wasn't against their standards. So be aware it's a very long shot. If you don't care about that, if you just enjoy writing and you want to put it out, go for it. And Amazon's a great resource for putting it out there. And there's others. There's Drafted Digital, put it out to a bunch of different markets. Go directly to Barnes & Noble, their website. I'm not trying to just sell Amazon. There's a lot of ways to put your book out there in print or ebook. Ebook for me is the big daddy. My print is nothing. Everybody buys ebooks. It's probably 90% of my business, and audiobooks outsell my print. Print is just a tiny amount. It's just not going anywhere. But you can, once you got let's say you're writing and you're editing as you go. So you're done. You got your Word document, you're done. You literally just finished, but it's polished, it's formatted the way it should be, which isn't a big challenge. Once you're done, it can be on Amazon literally in hours. It could be, as long, you got to get a cover done, but it could be, they might go faster for people who have a sales record, but let's say you're at least by the next day or two. But mine are usually up. If I hit publish in the morning, it might be mid-afternoon and it's up for sale, Yeah. And that's how fast it can happen. And then you go about marketing it, and there's some things you can do that work and almost nothing does though. That's a different topic, but the vast majority of marketing efforts for books don't do anything. Book tours, reviews, hopefully a bunch of your listeners will go out. I did this solely because I knew it would be fun, and you're one of my readers, and I like doing this kind of thing. But the idea, will it sell any books? The reality is, and this is just objective, is probably not, but that's okay. This is fun, and hopefully I'm helping possibly some other authors learn stuff. I'm giving readers a little look behind. And even if it's just fun, that's great. But as far as what sells books, very few does. Now, you going and telling your buddy, which you put over the years, if you've read my books, I'm sure you're the kind of guy that would go, hey, Bob, you need to read this. And hopefully, Bob, that sells books. So word of mouth sells books. But so just know what, as far as the actual writing itself, I guess I really haven't gotten into how to be a better writer. Just read. And if you're reading a mystery and you want to write a mystery, as you're reading all these mysteries you love, think about what's making this work. Why do I enjoy this? Is it because each chapter ends with a cliffhanger? Is it because I love the humor? Is it because the chapters are short? Is it because there's so little thick walls of non-dialogue, just narrative? Because some people hate that. They like dialogue. They like to move along. Others love all the detail, like in historical mysteries of the clothing and the food, and that's great too. So think about what it is you're enjoying as you're reading it, and note that when you write your own, So
No, that's all good advice. Yeah, and you blew my mind earlier, because I still totally forgot about emailing you so long ago. First, how did you find that email? Because I know I'm not using the same email address.
Well, a lot of times when, I do get plenty of email, but it's not so overwhelmingly much that I can't answer them. I answer every email anybody ever sends me, assuming it reaches me, but I answer every one of them. And so sometimes when I get an email, well, if it's like Bob Smith, chances are real slim that I'm ever going to remember that name. But right. Jackson Huff, do you go by Jackson or Jack?
I go by Jackson.
Well, it's a Jackson Huff. I'm always studying names because I'm looking for names for my characters. And Jackson Huff, I'm like, that's a great name, Yeah. So I probably thought that 15 years ago, and I have a great memory. Uh-huh. Well, for some things, lines from books or movies 40 years later, but like Jackson Huff, I'm like, and so I probably, when you asked me to do this, and I save all those emails from readers. I've got this huge folder in my email. Because I just think it's nice to save them. I don't ever go back and read them, but occasionally if I go, that name sounds familiar, I'll search. Have I got an email from this person before? I was like, oh, that's right. I got one in 2006. And I went back and read it. And I don't remember that. I remembered your name, but I didn't remember that you had asked me for an autograph. It was when I read the email from then. I was like, oh, look, he asked me for an autograph. And I guess you're a young guy. So you were probably obviously you were 14 years younger or 15 years younger. I don't know how old you were, but
yeah, I was about 14 years old at that point.
Yeah, it struck me as you were a student, and that's great. And I was honored that you asked me for an autograph, and I can't remember what I sent you. If I was any kind of nice guy, I probably sent you a book, but I guess maybe I didn't. Otherwise, you probably remember that.
You absolutely did send me something. I don't remember. I'll tell you, I was kind of a strange kid. I did things in reverse. Now I'm kind of less involved, but used to. I read all these books. I used to, like, pretty much that year, 2006, probably every senator in the Senate I sent and asked for an autograph. So I have tons. Like, it was pretty cool.
Great.
But your autograph is definitely in that box with all the senators' autographs. So you're either, depending on how you feel, you're either in good company or you're in terrible company.
Well, I have to say it tickled me when I saw that you had written me back then after this invitation, and then to know that young guy who asked for my autograph 15 years ago is now out doing his thing, creating this podcast. And I looked at, some of the folks you'd had on. I'm like, that is so cool that you're doing what you're doing and enjoying it. And that's the other thing to people, like, step up and ask. I mean, look, go for the biggest name and go, will you do this for me? I want you on as my guest. Or if you're a writer, go to the biggest agent on the bunch or the highest profile, the one that represents all the top authors. And yeah, pitch to them. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they can turn you down, But I just thought, I think it's really cool that you're doing what you're doing, and I'm tickled by it all. I think it's great.
Well, very good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and you're one of the, when I started looking at authors that I wanted to actually to reach somebody who wrote something outside of their own life. You're one of the first people I thought about. So.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Absolutely. So we're talking about, these books. You said this may not sell a single copy, but let's just tell people where they can find it should they want to prove you wrong.
Okay. Well, they should know first thing that the first book in each series is free. That's a little tactic that a lot of authors use called perma-free. And if you've got a Kindle or a Nook or any kind of e-reader, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo, I think, and Apple iBooks, and grab the first book for free. And if you don't like it, well, you haven't lost anything. Now, if you like funny mysteries, you're probably going to like the Blanco. And if you like more traditional, although still fun, it's Roy Ballard. He's not a private investigator, but he acts like one and does a lot of, like, insurance fraud investigation. And there's always some twists and turns. And again, it's just, grab it for free. Look at the reviews on Amazon. It's got, I don't know, it's like 3,000 reviews now or something. And, see if it's for you. And again, it doesn't cost anything. So what are you going to lose?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, but I have taken up a lot of your time. So I do really appreciate that you've
just
been
for
here.
Reality, we got to keep it at a certain level or no one's going to want to listen.
Right. Well, hey, we do have to there's a sweet spot with podcasts. So I don't want to go beyond that, but I have really appreciated your time.
Oh, you bet. I enjoyed it.
So that was Ben Rehder. Hope you enjoyed that. Definitely really enjoyed speaking with him. It was just so cool. Like I mentioned, just kind of blew my mind that he remembered my email as a 13, 14-year-old, and just kind of the full circle that we're in now, where I emailed him back then, one of my favorite authors growing up, and now I spoke to him on the podcast. So it was just a cool thing. I do recommend you checking out his books. Definitely, I think that if you enjoyed listening to him, you kind of would enjoy those books too. This kind of the humor behind the way that he talks is kind of like how the books are. They definitely have some zany things happening in the Blanco County books, and then maybe a little less, but still some funny moments in the Ballard series as well. Check those books out if you're a reader of mysteries at all. If you want to check out, funny mysteries, or you've always liked those, I think that Ben's books are ones to give a shot to for sure. Hopefully, if you're an aspiring writer, you learn quite a bit from him. Like I mentioned at the opening, blunt advice. He didn't tell everyone to be a writer, and I think that's important because so many people, even authors I've had on before, kind of mention just the ways to become a better writer, and sometimes, hey, it just may not be in the cards, and that's okay. But I appreciate Ben being here. Appreciate you being here. If you are a longtime listener here, thanks for coming back, and please do comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff in the ratings for Apple and for Spotify. If you're a Ben Rehder fan and just listening to some behind the scenes, thanks again for being here. Hope you check out some of the other interviews. Definitely a lot of great people I've interviewed, and a lot more great ones to come. So stick around, if you will. Yeah, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. Take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.